3 years ago, my wife vanished with our son and a note. I'm free. Last week, I saw her on a Miami beach, laughing, thinking I was a broken man. She didn't know I'd uncovered her lover's crimes, a $500,000 insurance policy on my life, and the truth about our son's father. Her perfect world is about to unravel. I'm Jake Torres, and I'm rewriting the ending to this betrayal. Jake Torres gripped his sketch pad, the pencil scratching sharp lines across the paper as the Miami sunset bled orange into the horizon. South Beach buzzed. Waves crashed, tourists laughed, and seagulls wheeled overhead. He sat cross-legged on the sand, capturing the scene for a book cover commission, his first in months. 3 years ago, this beach would have been a family outing, with Mateo building castles and Sophia snapping photos. Now it was just Jake alone until he saw her. Sophia strutted along the shoreline, barefoot, phone pressed to her ear, her laugh slicing through the evening air. Jake's hand froze mid-stroke. 3 years of silence, since she'd vanished with their son and a note. I'm free. His pulse quickened, but he stayed still, watching her twirl a lock of hair, a telltale sign of her lies. She hadn't seen him yet, her attention on the call, her voice carrying a carefree lilt that twisted something deep in Jake's chest. He'd rebuilt his life since her betrayal. His Coconut Grove bookstore was thriving, and Elena, the artist who'd become his anchor, filled the void Sophia left. But the folder in his bag, DNA results, insurance documents, and proof of Sophia's lover's crimes, kept him tethered to the past. Jake had uncovered the truth. Mateo, the boy he'd raised for 9 years, wasn't his. Sophia had taken out a $500,000 life insurance policy on him before she fled. And her lover, Diego Ruiz, ran a real estate empire built on bribes and shortcuts. Sophia glanced up, scanning the beach, and her eyes locked onto Jake's. Her laugh choked off, her phone slipping into the wet sand with a dull thud. She froze, her body rigid, as if the universe had pressed pause. Jake didn't move, his gaze steady from 30 feet away, sketching forgotten. Her casual confidence evaporated, replaced by a flicker of panic. She wasn't supposed to see him again. Not here, not alive, not knowing. Jake's mind raced. The old Jake would have waved, offered a smile to ease the tension. But that man died when he found the insurance policy, when the DNA test confirmed Mateo's real father was Diego. Now, he was a man with a plan, one he'd been building for 6 months. Sophia bent to retrieve her phone, her hands trembling, her eyes darting back to him. She took a hesitant step forward, then stopped, caught in the surf's gentle pull. He could walk away, let her stew in her guilt. But the folder's weight in his bag demanded action. Jake stood, brushing sand from his jeans, and tucked the sketch pad under his arm. Sophia watched, her posture stiff, as if bracing for a blow. He moved toward the boardwalk, deliberately passing within 10 feet of her. Her voice broke the silence, unsteady but familiar. Jake. He paused, turning slowly. Sophia, he said, his tone flat, masking the storm inside. Enjoying the beach? Her lips parted, but no words came. She clutched her phone, sand clinging to its edges. I didn't expect you here, she managed, her voice thin. How's the bookstore? Better than ever, Jake replied, stepping closer, his eyes narrowing. Amazing what you can do when no one's siphoning your accounts. Sophia flinched, her fingers tightening around the phone. She knew he knew about the money, the lies, maybe even Diego. Jake, we should talk, she said, her voice steadier now, but her eyes betrayed her fear. About Mateo, about everything. He studied her, the woman who'd shared his bed for a decade while plotting his ruin. Not today, he said, turning toward the parking lot. But soon. Sophia didn't follow, but he felt her stare as he walked away. His phone buzzed. Elena, texting from her shared apartment in Coral Gables. Coffee's ready. How's the sketch? Jake typed a quick reply. Sketch is fine. Saw Sophia. Game's on. Elena wasn't just his partner. She was Diego's ex-fiancée, the one he'd dumped for Sophia. She'd approached Jake a year ago, posing as a customer at his bookstore, before revealing her connection to Diego. Over coffee, she'd shared the first piece of the puzzle, Diego's real estate deals, shady permits, and bribed inspectors. Together, they dug deeper, unearthing the insurance policy and Diego's criminal ties. Elena's evidence, photos, documents, emails, was Jake's leverage. Back at the apartment, Elena handed him a steaming mug, her dark eyes searching his face. How'd she react, seeing you alive and unbothered? She asked, leaning against the counter. Like she saw a ghost, Jake said, setting the folder on the table. She knows I'm not the man she left. Elena nodded, flipping open the folder to reveal the DNA results. You ready to use this? The custody hearing's in 5 days. Jake stared at the sealed envelope, the one he'd carried unopened for weeks. He'd raised Mateo, tucked him in, cheered at his soccer games, taught him to read. But the truth about his paternity changed everything. I need to know, he said, tearing it open. The words hit like a punch. Probability of paternity, 0, 2%. He exhaled, the air heavy with finality. Diego's son, he said, voice low. She knew. Elena squeezed his hand. You're still his dad, Jake. Blood doesn't change that. But this gives you power in court. He nodded, resolve hardening. Sophia had manipulated him for years, but now he held the cards. She's been playing Diego too, he said, pulling out the insurance documents. $500,000, taken out 8 months before she left. Beneficiary, Sofia Torres. Not Mateo. Elena's eyes widened. She planned to cash out if anything happened to you. Exactly, Jake said. And Diego's dirty deals? They're about to catch up with him. That night, Jake tracked Sophia's movements online. She posted a photo from the beach, captioned Living My Truth. The irony burned. He cross-referenced her post with Diego's business trips. Identical dates in Orlando, Tampa, Key West. Receipts in an old email account under her maiden name confirmed it. She'd been funneling money, hiding assets, building a new life while Jake grieved. The next morning, he tailed her to a downtown cafe where she met Diego. Jake watched from across the street, snapping photos as Diego handed her an envelope. Their body language screamed tension. Diego's jaw tight, Sophia's hands fidgeting. Jake texted Elena. They're meeting. Looks heated. I'm following Diego next. Diego drove to a construction site in Brickell, a half-finished condo tower. Jake parked a block away, noting the lack of safety barriers, the shoddy scaffolding. Elena's documents had detailed Diego's violations, substandard materials, ignored inspections. Jake emailed an anonymous tip to the city regulator, attaching photos Elena had smuggled from Diego's old files. The dominoes were falling. Back home, Elena was waiting, her laptop open to a news article. Regulators are sniffing around Diego's projects, she said. Your tip worked. Good, Jake said, his voice steady but his heart racing. Sophia's next move will tell us how much she knows. The phone buzzed. Sophia. We need to talk. Mateo's asking why you looked mad at the beach. Jake showed Elena the text, his jaw tight. She's using him again. Don't let her bait you, Elena said. Stick to the plan. The hearing's coming. Jake nodded, the folder on the table a reminder of the truth he now carried. Sophia thought she'd buried him, but Jake Torres was far from broken. He was ready to rewrite the story, starting with her. Jake Torres crouched behind a stack of construction pallets, the Miami heat sticking to his skin as he watched Diego Ruiz argue with a site foreman at the Brickell condo project. Diego's gestures were sharp, his voice low but furious, unaware of the regulators' van pulling up 2 blocks away. Jake's anonymous tip had sparked an unannounced inspection, and the tension in Diego's posture confirmed he knew trouble was brewing. Jake snapped a photo of the exchange, then slipped back to his truck, heart pounding with the thrill of closing in. Back at his Coconut Grove apartment, Elena pored over a spreadsheet on her laptop, cross-referencing Diego's permits with city records. 3 of his sites have violations flagged already, she said, her voice steady but urgent. If the inspectors dig deeper, his whole operation could collapse by next week. She slid a flash drive across the table. More evidence. Worker complaints, forged safety reports. I got these from a contact at Diego's old firm. Jake plugged the drive into his laptop, scanning emails detailing Diego's bribes to bypass inspections. This is enough to bury him, he said, forwarding the files to his lawyer, Carla Vega. Carla had been building a case for the custody hearing, weaving the DNA results and insurance policy into a narrative of Sophia's deceit. Jake's goal wasn't just custody of Mateo. It was exposing the lies that had stolen his life. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Mateo's upset. He wants to see you. Can we meet? Jake's jaw tightened. She was dangling their son like bait, but he couldn't ignore Mateo's needs. She's pushing my buttons, he told Elena, grabbing his keys. I'll meet her, but I'm not playing her game. At a bustling South Beach cafe, Sophia waited at an outdoor table, her posture stiff, Mateo beside her coloring on a napkin. Jake approached, his focus on the boy's small hands gripping the crayon. Hey, buddy, he said, kneeling to Mateo's level. Missed you. Mateo's eyes lit up. Dad, why don't you come home anymore? The question hit like a blade, but Jake kept his voice calm. I'm always here for you, okay? Just sorting some grown-up stuff. Sophia cut in, her tone clipped. He's been asking about you nonstop since the beach. This isn't good for him, Jake. Her words carried a calculated edge, shifting blame. Jake stood, meeting her gaze, then stopped using him to dodge the truth. Her eyes flickered with unease, but she pressed on. What truth? You're scaring him with this distance. Jake leaned closer, voice low. The truth about the $500,000 you'd get if I disappeared, or the fact that Mateo's not mine. Sophia's breath caught, her hand gripping the table. She hadn't expected him to confront her so directly. Mateo looked up, confused. What's Dad talking about, Mom? Sophia forced a smile, ruffling his hair. Nothing, sweetie. Finish your drawing. She stood, pulling Jake aside. You don't know what you're messing with, she hissed. Diego's not someone you cross. Then why is he sweating at his sight right now? Jake shot back, nodding toward his phone, where a news alert flashed. Brickell project halted amid safety concerns. Sophia's face paled. She grabbed her purse, muttering about a call, and stepped away, leaving Mateo with Jake. Jake sat with his son, helping him sketch a superhero. Is this you, Dad? Mateo asked, pointing to the cape. Jake's chest tightened. Maybe it is, buddy. For 10 minutes, it was just them, father and son, no lies. But Sophia's absence stretched too long. Jake glanced over to see her pacing by the cafe's edge. Phone pressed to her ear, her voice rising in panic. He texted Elena. Sophia's rattled. Talking to Diego, I bet. Stay sharp. Elena replied instantly. Got eyes on Diego's office. He just left in a hurry. Be careful. Jake pocketed his phone, his mind racing. Sophia was cornered, and cornered people made mistakes. He needed to push harder before she regrouped. That evening, Jake met Carla at her downtown office. She spread documents across her desk, Diego's financials, the insurance policy, and a new find. Bank transfers linking Sophia to Diego's offshore accounts. She's been funneling money for years, Carla said. If we tie this to her custody claims, she'll lose any chance at Mateo. Jake nodded, but his focus shifted to a photo Carla slid forward. Diego meeting a known fixer at a Miami club. This guy handles dirty work for developers, Carla said. If Diego's desperate, he might escalate. Jake's stomach churned. He'd wanted justice, not a war, but Diego's world was unraveling, and Sophia was caught in the crossfire. The next morning, Jake woke to a voicemail from an unknown number. Diego's voice was cold, controlled. Torres, back off. You don't know what you're digging into. Jake saved the message, forwarding it to Carla. The threat confirmed Diego's fear and Jake's leverage. He drove to Mateo's school, where Sophia was picking him up. She spotted Jake and froze, her hand on Mateo's shoulder. We need to talk, Jake said, his tone firm but calm. About the money you've been hiding. About Diego's fixer. Sophia's grip on Mateo tightened, her eyes darting to the parking lot. A black SUV idled nearby, Diego's. You're making a mistake, she whispered, but her voice cracked. Jake stepped closer, lowering his voice so Mateo wouldn't hear. The mistake was yours, Sophia, thinking you could erase me. He turned to Mateo, smiling. See you soon, buddy. Love you. As he walked away, he felt Sophia's stare and saw Diego's SUV peel out. The game was escalating, and Jake was ready for the next play. Jake Torres sat in his truck outside Mateo's school, watching the black SUV vanish into Miami's afternoon traffic. Diego's warning echoed in his mind, but fear had no hold on him now, only purpose. The custody hearing was 2 days away, and Jake's evidence against Sophia and Diego was a ticking bomb. He dialed Carla Vega, his lawyer, forwarding Diego's voicemail. "He's rattled," Jake said. "We need to move fast." Carla's voice crackled through the phone. "The judge will hear the financials and paternity results tomorrow. I'm adding Diego's threat to the file. It shows he's desperate." She paused. "But Jake, if Diego's hiring fixers, you need to watch your back." Jake hung up, his gaze fixed on the school's entrance where Sophia had stood minutes ago, her hand clutching Mateo's shoulder like a shield. He drove to Elena's art gallery in Wynwood, where she was cataloging new pieces. She looked up as he entered, her hands pausing over a canvas. "Diego's SUV was at the school," Jake said, setting his phone on the counter. "Sophia's scared, and he's making moves." Elena pulled up a security feed from a camera outside Diego's downtown office. "He's been meeting this guy all week," she said, pointing to a grainy image of the fixer from Carla's photo. "They're planning something." Jake's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or Mateo pays." His blood ran cold. He showed Elena, who grabbed her laptop. "I'm hacking into Diego's email backups," she said, fingers flying. "If he's threatening a kid, there's proof." Within minutes, she found a thread between Diego and the fixer, discussing pressure on Jake. One line stood out: "Make it look accidental." Jake forwarded it to Carla, his resolve hardening. "They're not touching Mateo." That night, Jake met an old friend, Marcus, a private investigator, at a quiet diner in Little Havana. Marcus slid a folder across the table. "Diego's fixer has a rap sheet. Extortion, assault. He's been tailing you since the beach." Jake flipped through photos. The fixer outside his bookstore, near Elena's gallery, even at the school. "Diego's not just scared," Marcus said. "He's cornered. His projects are frozen, and investors are pulling out." Jake leaned back, processing. What's Sophia's role in this? Marcus tapped a bank statement in the folder. "She's been moving Diego's money to a Cayman account. If his empire falls, she's planning to run." Jake's stomach twisted. Sophia wasn't just complicit. She was orchestrating an escape, using Mateo as leverage to keep him silent. The next morning, Jake arrived at the courthouse early, the folder of evidence heavy in his bag. Carla met him outside, her expression grim. "Sophia's lawyer is pushing for full custody, claiming you're unstable," she said. "They're spinning the DNA results to say you're obsessed with revenge." Jake clenched his jaw. "Let them try. I've got enough to end this." Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Sophia sat across the aisle, her posture rigid, avoiding Jake's gaze. Mateo wasn't present. Sophia's mother was watching him. The judge, a stern woman named Alvarez, called the hearing to order. Carla stood, presenting the DNA results first. "My client raised Mateo Torres for 9 years, unaware he was not the biological father," she said, sliding the test across the bench. "Sophia Torres concealed this, manipulating Mr. Torres for financial gain." Sophia's lawyer, a slick man named Rivera, countered. "Mr. Torres is fixated on destroying my client's life, using fabricated evidence to harass her." He gestured to Sophia, who dabbed her eyes for effect. Jake's fists clenched. He knew that move, her calculated tears. But Judge Alvarez's expression remained unreadable. Carla pivoted, presenting the insurance policy. 8 months before Sophia filed for divorce, she took out a $500,000 policy on Mr. Torres, listing herself as the sole beneficiary. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Sophia shifted, her hands twisting in her lap. "We also have evidence," Carla continued, "of Ms. Torres funneling funds from Diego Ruiz's illicit accounts, tying her to his criminal activities." Rivera objected, but Judge Alvarez allowed Carla to proceed. She played Diego's voicemail, the threat clear in his clipped tone. Then she submitted the email thread with a fixer, the words "make it look accidental" projected on a screen. Sophia's composure cracked, her breath hitching audibly. Diego, called as a witness, took the stand, his confidence gone. Under Carla's questioning, he stammered, denying knowledge of the fixer's plans, but unable to explain the emails. Jake watched Sophia's reaction. She was whispering urgently to Rivera, who looked increasingly uneasy. The judge called a recess, and Jake stepped outside, his phone buzzing with a call for Marcus. "Diego's fixer just left his office with a duffel bag," Marcus said. "I'm tailing him. Stay with Mateo." Jake's heart raced. He texted Sophia's mother, confirming Mateo was safe at her house, then called Elena. Get to Mateo now. Diego's making a move. Elena arrived at the house within 20 minutes, reporting Mateo was fine but shaken, asking why Sophia was acting strange. Jake returned to the courthouse, where Sophia cornered him in the hallway. You're ruining everything, she hissed, her voice low to avoid attention. Call this off, or Diego will hurt you. Jake stepped closer, his voice steady. You're the one who brought Diego into our lives. You don't get to play victim now. Sophia's eyes darted to the courtroom doors, where Diego was exiting, his phone pressed to his ear. Jake followed her gaze, catching Diego's glance, a mix of fear and fury. As the hearing resumed, Carla dropped the final blow. Bank records showing Sophia's transfers to the Cayman account, timed with Diego's failing projects. Ms. Torres planned to flee with Mr. Ruiz's illicit funds, Carla said, leaving Mr. Torres to fight for a child she knew wasn't his. The judge's eyes narrowed, and Sophia's lawyer scrambled to object, but the damage was done. Outside, Jake got a text from Marcus. Fixers headed to your bookstore. I've alerted the cops. Jake's pulse surged. He called Elena, who confirmed Mateo was secure. Stay with him, Jake said. I'm ending this tonight. The hearing adjourned with no ruling, but Jake knew the truth was out. Sophia's lies were unraveling, and Diego's empire was crumbling. The next move would be theirs, but Jake was one step ahead. Jake Torres sped toward his Coconut Grove bookstore, the Miami skyline blurring past as Marcus's warning echoed. Diego's fixer was targeting his shop. Police sirens wailed in the distance, closing in, but Jake couldn't wait. His phone buzzed. Elena, confirming Mateo was safe with Sophia's mother. Cops are on their way, she said. Don't do anything reckless. Jake gripped the wheel tighter. I'm not letting them destroy what I've built. He parked a block from the bookstore, spotting the fixer's car idling out front. The man, broad-shouldered with a shaved head, slipped inside, a crowbar glinting in his hand. Jake's pulse hammered as he crept toward the back entrance, unlocking it silently. Inside, shelves of books loomed in the dark, the scent of paper grounding him. He heard glass shatter, the front display window. The fixer was trashing the place, but Jake stayed calm, recording the scene on his phone. Footsteps crunched closer. Jake ducked behind a counter as the fixer swung the crowbar, toppling a stack of novels. Blue lights flashed outside, police. The fixer froze, then bolted for the door, but officers swarmed, cuffing him before he could escape. Jake stepped out, handing his phone to a detective. Video evidence, he said. This guy works for Diego Ruiz. The detective nodded, already radioing for backup to question Diego. Jake's phone lit up with a call from Carla Vega. The judge wants you back in court tomorrow, she said. Sophie is cracking under pressure. She's offered a deal, supervised visits for her, primary custody for you. Jake exhaled, relief warring with suspicion. Why the sudden change? Carla's voice sharpened. Your evidence shook her. Plus, Diego's projects are officially shut down. He's toxic now. By morning, news broke. Diego's real estate firm faced criminal charges for fraud and safety violations. Jake arrived at the courthouse, where Sophia waited outside, her posture slumped, no trace of her usual defiance. I didn't want this, she said, her voice raw as Jake approached. Diego promised we'd start over, but he's gone. Jake studied her, unmoved. You chose him. Now Mateo's caught in the mess. She reached for his arm, but he stepped back. Tell me about the Cayman account, he said. You were going to run with his money. Sophia's eyes widened, then dropped. It was for Mateo, she whispered. A safety net. Jake shook his head. You don't get to hide behind him anymore. He walked inside, leaving her in the hallway, her silence louder than any excuse. In court, Judge Alvarez reviewed the new evidence, Diego's fixer's arrest, linked to threats against Jake, and bank records tying Sophia to illicit funds. Carla stood, her voice commanding. Ms. Torres conspired with Diego Ruiz to defraud my client, endangering his life and their son's stability. Sophia's lawyer, Rivera, fumbled, offering no rebuttal. Sophia stared at the floor, her hands trembling. The judge turned to Jake. Mr. Torres, why pursue custody of a child who isn't biologically yours? Jake straightened, his voice steady. Because I've been his father for 9 years. I taught him to ride a bike, stayed up with him through fevers, promised I'd always be there. That's what matters. Alvarez nodded, her expression softening, and adjourned for a final ruling tomorrow. Outside, Jake drove to Sophia's mother's house to see Mateo. The boy ran to him, clutching a soccer ball. "Are you staying, Dad?" he asked, his voice small. Jake knelt, hugging him tightly. "Always, buddy." Sophia's mother, Maria, watched from the porch, her eyes red. "She's falling apart," Maria said. "Last night, she collapsed. Ambulance took her to Memorial Hospital." Jake's stomach dropped. "What happened?" Maria sighed. "Pills. Too many. She's stable now, but Mateo found her. He's shaken." Jake's mind raced. Sophia's desperation had reached a breaking point. He called Elena, who met him at the hospital. Mateo clung to Jake's hand as they entered the ICU, where Sophia lay connected to monitors, her breathing shallow but steady. "She didn't want to live," Mateo whispered, tears streaking his face. Jake pulled him close, shielding him from the machine's beeps. "She's going to be okay," he said, though doubt gnawed at him. Elena squeezed his shoulder. "You're his anchor now. Whatever happens, he needs you." Jake nodded, the weight of fatherhood. Chosen, not born, settling deeper. Later, at the hospital's waiting room, Maria shared more. "Diego left town last night," she said. "Left Sophia a note. Said he couldn't handle the fallout." Jake's jaw tightened. Diego had run, just as he'd abandoned Elena years ago. But Sophia's collapse wasn't Jake's burden anymore. He drove Mateo home, tucking him in a bed with a promise to stay close. That night, Elena showed Jake a new email from her contact at Diego's firm. "He's hiding in Tampa, using a fake name," she said. "I tipped off the DA." Jake stared at the screen, the pieces of his plan locking into place. Sophia's lies, Diego's crimes, the fixer's arrest, all roads led to justice. But as he looked at Mateo's drawings on the fridge, superheroes with capes, Jake knew his real fight was for his son's future. The next morning, Carla called with an update. Sophia's lawyer withdrew the custody fight. "She's checking into rehab after the hospital." Jake exhaled, relief flooding him. And Diego? Carla's voice held a grim satisfaction. "Arrested an hour ago in Tampa. He's facing multiple charges." Jake hung up, the courthouse looming tomorrow. Sophia's world had collapsed, Diego was done, and Mateo was safe. But the final ruling would decide everything. Jake Torres stood outside the Miami courthouse, the morning sun glinting off the glass doors as he clutched a folder of legal papers. The final custody hearing was minutes away, and the weight of the past 3 years, Sophia's betrayal, Diego's crimes, Mateo's uncertain future, pressed against his chest. He glanced at his phone. A text from Elena. "You've got this." Mateo's waiting. Jake exhaled, steeling himself, and stepped inside. The courtroom hummed with anticipation. Judge Alvarez took her seat, her gaze sweeping over Jake, Sophia, and their lawyers. Sophia, fresh from rehab, sat quietly, her hands folded, a stark contrast to the defiant woman Jake had faced on the beach. Carla Vega stood, her voice clear. "Your Honor, my client has been Mateo's primary caregiver, despite Sophia Torres' attempts to undermine him with lies about paternity and financial deceit. She presented a summary of Diego's arrest, Sophia's offshore accounts, and the fixer's conviction. Sophia's lawyer, Rivera, rose, his tone subdued. Ms. Torres acknowledges her mistakes and requests supervised visitation, conceding primary custody to Mr. Torres. Jake's breath caught. Sophia's surrender was real. Judge Alvarez turned to Sophia. "Is this your position, Ms. Torres?" Sophia nodded, her voice barely audible. "I want what's best for Mateo. Jake's his father. Always has been." The judge's eyes met Jake's. "Mr. Torres, you've pursued custody despite no biological tie. Why?" Jake stood, his voice steady. "I've been there for every school play, every late-night story, every moment Mateo needed me. Blood doesn't make a father, commitment does." Alvarez's expression softened, and she called a brief recess to finalize her decision. Outside, Jake found Sophia waiting in the hallway. "I'm trying to fix this," she said, her eyes meeting his for the first time without evasion. "Rehab showed me how much I hurt you both." Jake studied her, searching for manipulation but finding only raw honesty. "Keep trying," he said. For Mateo. She nodded, stepping back as the bailiff called him inside. Judge Alvarez delivered her ruling, primary custody to Jake Torres, with supervised visitation for Sofia Torres, contingent on continued therapy. Jake's shoulders relaxed, a quiet victory settling in. The gavel struck, and the courtroom cleared. Sofia approached, extending a letter. "Mateo wrote this for you," she said, then walked away. Jake opened it. A child scrawl. "Thanks for being my dad. Love you." He drove to Elena's gallery, where Mateo waited, kicking a soccer ball against the wall. The boy ran to Jake, hugging him tightly. "Am I staying with you?" he asked, eyes wide. Jake knelt, smiling. "Yeah, buddy. You're home." Elena joined them, her hand brushing Jake's. "Told you you'd win," she said, her grin infectious. That evening, they took Mateo to a Key West beach, a celebratory trip. Waves lapped gently as Mateo built a sandcastle, laughing when it collapsed. Elena pulled Jake aside, handing him a small velvet box. "I've been holding this for you," she said. Jake's heart raced. He planned to propose, but hadn't found the moment. He turned to Mateo, who was watching, curious. "Buddy, what if Elena became your stepmom?" he asked, opening the box to reveal a simple ring. Mateo's face lit up. "Yes. Can I help with the wedding?" Elena laughed, ruffling his hair. "Deal, but only if you pick the cake." Jake slid the ring onto Elena's finger, their eyes locking in a shared promise. Mateo tugged at Jake's hand. "This is better than before," he said, glancing at the ocean. "It's just us now." Weeks later, Jake received a call from Carla. Diego's trial starts next month. He's pleading guilty to fraud and conspiracy. Sophia's cooperating with prosecutors. Jake nodded, unsurprised. Sophia's supervised visits had begun, and she'd kept her word, showing up for Mateo with a quiet sincerity. She sent Jake a text after one visit. "Thank you for giving me a chance to be better." He didn't reply, but saved the message, a small step toward closure. At the bookstore, Jake hung Mateo's drawing above the counter, a superhero with a cape labeled Dad. Business was steady, and Elena's gallery was thriving, their lives intertwining with new routines. One evening, Mateo asked about Diego. "Why didn't he want me?" Jake sat him down, choosing his words carefully. "Some people aren't ready to be parents, but I chose you every day. That's what counts." Months passed, and the family settled into a rhythm. Sophia's visits grew consistent, her therapy helping her rebuild trust with Mateo. Jake and Elena planned a small wedding, with Mateo as ring bearer, his excitement infectious. On the wedding day, under a Key West sunset, Jake stood beside Elena, Mateo grinning between them. The officiant spoke of love and choice, words that echoed Jake's journey. As they walked back to their car, Mateo swinging between them, Jake felt the past loosen its grip. Diego was gone, facing years in prison. Sophia was rebuilding, no longer a threat, but a reminder of lessons learned. The ocean stretched before them, endless and calm, a future shaped by truth and trust. Jake squeezed Elena's hand, Mateo's chatter filling the air. This was his family, not by blood, but by choice, forged through pain and redeemed by justice.